Welcome to Unleashing Happiness, the podcast where I teach you how to change your mindset, change your habits, and actually change your life. Welcome to the new Monday bonus. I'm your host, Cecilia Hendricks. And I am really excited to announce that with the ending of my 10-week course that I did through bonus episodes every Monday for the last 10 weeks, shocker, I have really decided that I really enjoyed doing those episodes. So I wanted to continue. I didn't want to stop, but I needed to find something to do on the Mondays. And I thought, one of the things that would have really helped me out in life was having a little bit of like mindset motivation. And so that's what I want to do today. It's essentially a podcast for you to listen to on Monday mornings where I'm going to share lectures, tidbits, things that I've learned. And it's really to get you in a great frame of mind so that you're able to go into your week feeling good and with the mindset that you want to have, and so that you can remain focused. So I hope that you find these beneficial. If you have any questions, I would absolutely love to hear from you. I seriously love hearing from everybody. And you can reach out to me by my email address, which is unleashinghappiness@ceciliahendricks.com. Today, I'm going to be reading from The Mental Equivalent by Emmet Fox. I always started out really learning about Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard is one of the teachers that has really resonated with me. I've always felt like I was able to understand what he was sharing a bit more, and I really appreciated what he shared. But in recent year or so, I've been really leaning more into Emmet Fox. So I definitely still read Neville, and I can see absolutely the similarities between Neville Goddard and Emmet Fox. And I just find he puts it in, I guess maybe the best way to put it is he puts it in a little bit more conversational and easier to understand. At least that's always been my impression. So if you're not familiar with Emmet Fox, he also was the author of the 7-Day Mental Diet. And I find the mental diet phenomenal. I actually just did my 7-Day Mental Diet, the best one that I have ever done, because I was able to lean into a lot more of the tools that I teach here. One of the things that I've realized is that for me, I had found myself in a really frustrating cycle of attempting to kind of learn how to put the pieces together of learning the law of assumption and using it in a way that actually worked in my life. And I just kind of continued with a cycle where it wasn't really working, and I would have some success and some not. And it was like kind of getting frustrating for me. So what I have found though, is that by taking a very practical approach to it, I was able to take the frustration out. And now when I put my step-by-step process into what I'm doing and where I'm focusing, I have immense success. It's actually really remarkable, and I'm super thankful for it. So here's our reading from The Mental Equivalent by Emmet Fox. Whatever enters into your life is but the material expression of some belief in your own mind. The kind of body you have, the kind of home you have, the kind of work you do, the kind of people you meet are all conditioned by and correspond to the mental concepts you are holding. The Bible teaches that from beginning to end. I am putting it in the language of metaphysics. The Bible gives it in the language of religion, but it is the same truth. The secret of successful living is to build up the mental equivalent that you want and to get rid of, to expunge the mental equivalent that you don't want. So here's one of the keys that I think can actually tie back to not only Neville Goddard, but the way that you want to think about whatever you're working on. Instead of really leaning into thinking about what you don't want and considering what you want to rid in your life, you want to instead dwell on the thoughts that you do want. And this is a very subtle shift, but it'll make the most massive changes in your life. The only way to expunge a wrong mental equivalent is to supply the opposite. Think the right thing. The right thought automatically expunges the wrong thought. If you say, I'm not going to think of resentment anymore, I don't believe in it, there's nothing to it, I'm not going to think of it anymore. What are you thinking about except resentment? You are still thinking resentment all the time and strengthening the mental equivalent of resentment. Forget it. Think of health and bodily ease and peace and harmony and speak the word for it. Then you are building up a mental equivalent of health. If you want your true place, if your problem is unemployment, no job, the wrong job, or a job that you don't like, if you say, I'm not going to think unemployment anymore, you are wrong. That is thinking unemployment, is it not? Think true place. If I say to you, don't think of the Statue of Liberty in New York, you know what you're thinking about. You are not thinking of anything except for the Statue of Liberty. There she is, complete with torch in her hand. And I said, don't think of her, but you do. So do not dwell on negative things, but replace them. Supplant them with the right constructive things. The law of mind is that you can only get rid of one thought by substituting another. If a carpenter drives a nail into a wooden wall or into a beam, there it is. Now, if he takes a second nail and drives it against the first is driven out and falls on the floor, and the second one takes place of the first one. That is what happens in the mind when you substitute one image for another. For everything in life, there has to be a mental equivalent. If you will start on this very day and refuse to think of your mistakes, and of course, that includes the mistake of others. If you will cease to think of mistakes and hold the right concepts instead, cease to think of fear and think of divine love instead, cease to think of lack and think prosperity in the presence of God's abundance instead. And then if you will think as clearly as possible and get interested, you will be building a mental equivalent of happiness and prosperity. And this completely aligns with the teachings of Neville Goddard, any sort of spiritual teacher that you may have found. That instead of thinking against what you don't want, you want to think about the things that you do. And I found that Emmet Fox's wording on this and the way that he wrote it and the way that he said it made it very clear that instead of thinking against something that you want to get rid of, you're going to think about the things that you want to draw into your life. This is what it means to work on a mental diet. It's not creating some mental battlefield in your head. It's not struggling with yourself and, beating yourself up and being frustrated with yourself. It's really just about using new thoughts to steer where your mind is going, to make a choice with the way that you're thinking about things, the focus that you're giving, and where you're really going to put your attention. And remember, where your attention goes is where reality flows, right? So the things that you pay attention to are what are going to continue in your life. They're what's going to grow. And that's why all of these teachers are saying the same thing, that instead of thinking, I'm not going to think resentment, there's no resentment in my life, you instead want to think of all the prosperity and wonderfulness and forgiveness and love that you have in your life. So as you go into your week and you're thinking about this and the mental equivalent, spend some time today paying attention to the way that you're looking at things and the way that you're focusing and what you're giving your attention to. And truly consider, are you giving your attention to the things that you actually want, or are you giving your attention to attempt to oppose the things that you don't? Because remember, the more that you give something attention, the more that it is there for you. So it's either then it's in your mind, it's what you're thinking about, it's actually what you're saying you want more of. Even if the words that you're trying to say is, I don't want this, I'm affirming actually actively against this thing. That's not really the key. The key is to turn your attention to the things that you want. And it sounds really easy when either the writers put it out that way or when I'm saying it here. And I can tell you from experience, it's not always that easy. You have to continuously check your mind without creating a battlefield for yourself. One of the most important things that you can learn is leaning into some emotional intelligence and taking your thoughts and being curious about them instead of being upset with yourself to the point that you're either hyper fixated on something, or you're mad at yourself and you start to spiral, or you fall into some sort of depressive episode. That's not the point here. The point is to say, oh, wait a minute. Am I actually focusing on what it is that I want in life? Or am I focusing against the things that I don't want? And when you start to pay attention to that, you'll start to see small shifts in the way that your mind works. And you can use tools. I've done tons of other podcast episodes that talk about tools to manage kind of unwanted thoughts. I'll put that podcast episode down in the show notes because I actually find it really helpful. I got a lot of really good feedback on that one. So I do think that you would find benefit in that. But there are ways that you can shift your focus, especially if you find yourself in a spiral and you can't really get yourself out of it. Reading again from Emmet Fox, Mental Equivalent. To change your thought and keep it changed is the way to build a new mental equivalent. It is the secret of accomplishment. You already have a mental equivalent for everything that is in your life today, and you must destroy the patterns for the things you do not want, and then they will disappear. You must build a new pattern or mental equivalent for the things you want, and then they will come into your life. Of course, changing your thought for a short time is the easiest thing in the world. Everyone does this when he goes to a metaphysical meeting. The beautiful atmosphere and the positive instruction make people feel very optimistic. The teacher reminds the audience of the truth of being, and they think, I believe that, and I'm going to practice it. But 5 minutes after they've left the meeting, they forget about it, perhaps for hours. The trouble with most students is not that they do not change their thought, but they do not keep it changed. If you want health, you must cease to think about sickness and fear, and you must get the habit of thinking healthy and harmony. There can be no sickness without fear, and you cannot be adversely affected by anything if you really have no fear concerning it. Everyone has many fears in the subconscious mind that he is not consciously aware of, but they are operating just the same. Change your thought and keep it changed, not for 10 seconds or even 10 days, but steadily and permanently. Then you will build a new mental equivalent, and a mental equivalent is always demonstrated. The secret of harmony and success is to concentrate your thought upon harmony and success. That is why I teach that attention is the key to life. What you attend to or concentrate upon, you bring into your life because you are building a mental equivalent. Many people fail to concentrate successfully because they think that concentration means willpower. They actually try to concentrate with their muscles and blood vessels. They frown, they clench their hands. Unwittingly, they think of an engineer's drill or carpenter's bit and brace. They suppose that the harder you press, the faster you'll get through. But this is all quite wrong. Forget the drill and think of a camera. In a camera, there is no question of pressure. The secret lies in focus. If you want to photograph something, you focus your camera lens quietly, steadily, and persistently on it for the necessary length of time. Every time I read this, I get chills because it's such a beautiful way to share the way to focus your attention. And I do tie it back to Neville Goddard because that's the teacher that I most started with. That's the one that I've resonated the most with. But Emmet Fox definitely stands all on his own. I do not want anybody to think that I think he's in Neville's shadow by any means. He has some phenomenal pieces of work. And I also think the way that he shares it makes it very easy to think about. So if you were considering taking a picture of something, you would focus on that item. If you wanted a picture of the flowers and not the building in the background, you wouldn't put your focus on not having the building in the background. You would put your focus on making sure that the flower was front and center. And that's the exact same way that you want to do things with whatever change you're trying to find in your life. You don't want to give life to the things that you do not want. You want to take your attention away from them, because attention continues to breed their life. Attention is how they continue to grow. And a lot of times, I know for myself, when I really started to pay attention to this, I found that the things that I was struggling the most with is because I was giving my attention in an attempt to do the opposition. So if I was looking at maybe wanting more wealth and bigger finances in my life, I would almost be focusing against having a small bank account versus feeling prosperity and success and the freedom that comes along with that. And those successes need to be identified by you. You need to decide what implies success for you. And that goes back to Neville Goddard's teachings of what would imply that you had this desired outcome. What would imply that you were the person that you want to be. And the reason that you're doing that is because you're learning how to slowly shift your attention back to the thing that you want, not in opposition of what you don't want. So I hope that you found this beneficial. I hope that you liked it. I hope that I read okay. I would definitely like to hear from you. If you have any questions or any suggestions or anything that you'd like me to read, I would love to hear it. Unleashing Happiness at CeciliaHendricks.com. And if you did appreciate this information, please definitely subscribe so that you can stay up to date. I'll be doing these every single Monday, and then I have my regular podcast episodes on Wednesday. So all the best. I hope that you have a beautiful week. I hope that this definitely helps you keep your mindset on track. And remember, for today and for the next week, I want you to pay attention to where you're actually placing your attention. And if you find yourself placing it on something that's in opposition of what you actually want, I want you to work on bringing it back to paying attention to what it is that you do, paying attention to what it is you do want versus opposition to what you don't want. So if that doesn't make sense, if you need any clarity, by all means, reach out. I am happy to answer questions through email as well. Have an absolutely beautiful week, and I will be back on Wednesday. Thank you again for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more about all things going on with me, go ahead and visit my website at CeciliaHendricks.com.